SAPICS is the body professionalizing supply chain management in Africa since 1966. 53 years of commitment to supply chain excellence in Africa whilst growing, empowering, and sustaining a vital community of educated supply chain professionals. Supply chains are at the heart of every organization, and supply chain competence is the catalyst for economic growth and transformation. As supply chains become more complex, skilled and ethically accountable management is essential. But where are those professionally designated and ethically accountable supply chain professionals? You are these supply chain professionals. These are our supply chain focused organizations, and SAPICS aims to elevate your role as a supply chain professional within them. Join us on our journey to elevate supply chain management as a profession in Africa. Think supply chain. Think SAPICS.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the SAPICS 2021 Young Professional and Student Conference. It's great to have you all with us today. So, a warm welcome to everybody, and just give me a show of hands who is hearing about SAPICS for the first time. And I hope that that's not many of you. And drop in the box on the right-hand side where you are from. So it'd be interesting to see which universities are represented, who's already in the working world and doing a little bit of work, has some experience. So, and definitely engage with us in the chat, the discussion thingy on the right-hand side tab. I should call it a tab. So I just want to tell you that the platform won't break. So feel free to navigate your way around freely. If you do get kicked out, log back in and head for the sessions, which is on the left-hand side of your screen. And then you go back into the session from which you came. Okay. Attendees on the left-hand side tab. There you can see who's attending the conference and you can message them. So it'll be interesting for you to reach out to people, see who's here, organized to meet in the lounge area, again on the left-hand side of your screen. Some of the tables are branded, but it doesn't mean that you can't sit at them. They literally just have branding on them. So feel free to sit wherever. You can join people at the table and have discussions. You need to network as much as possible while you're here because that's what it's all about. Networking is the name of the game, especially in this profession. So speakers will be asked to visit table. On the left-hand side, again, there's a speaker tab. We won't be using it. We will ask them to join tables instead. If you'd like to engage with the speaker, you are more than welcome to do that. It's always good to connect with them. They've got a lot of expertise, and they're always quite happy to share their knowledge with all and everybody, especially our young professionals, because we need to make sure that you're all fit and ready to add value to the world of the supply chain profession. Sponsors hangout on the left-hand side of the screen. They have a hangout booth. If there's nobody there at the time that you visit, feel free to leave a virtual card. It'll show you how to do that. You just press the button. It says leave card. They'll get in touch with you when somebody gets back in the booth. And I know how much you youngsters love to do your selfies. So that has been catered for in the sponsor hangouts. There's a little place where you can take a selfie picture and you upload it to social media. So we want you to do that and share everything with social media and let everybody know where you are, what you're doing, and what your experience is like. So definitely have fun doing that. And don't just take one photo. You can go into multiple of the sponsors' rooms and take photos everywhere. So really just knock yourself out. So on the top right-hand side, you'll see what looks like a little shopping bag. The program, the mentor documents, and the SAPICS membership brochures are all in that little shopping bag. So you can take that away with you and get all that information from there. Now, what's really, really important for SAPICS, as well as for you for future events, is if you evaluate the speakers and the sessions. That can be done on the right-hand side. There's a poll tab there. The poll will come up, and all you need to do is put a quick evaluation in. It's very, very important to do that. So we make sure that we bring quality, topics of relevance, etc., etc., etc. So we want you to hang around for the quiz later, because aside from being really, really good fun and a nice way to get things wrapped up, there's some great prizes up for grabs. So just bear that in mind. So I just want you all to listen, learn, and enjoy, and take away from this as much as you can. And if there's any questions that you have or anything that you don't understand and you want clarity on, reach out to any of us at any time, drop a note, drop a message, and let's see what we can do to help you. So I am absolutely delighted, and we are very privileged this morning to have our SAPICS President, MJ Schoemaker, join us. So she's going to say a welcome to all of you. So MJ, welcome up onto the stage, and thank you for being with us today.
Morning, everyone, and thank you, Tonya, for that kind welcome. Fantastic to see you all here today. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you. It's always funny how we say happy to see you, but when we move to a platform like that, we know you're all there in the background, but I'm sure we'll get an opportunity later to meet up with each other. I just want to acknowledge the challenging time it's been for supply chain practitioners and also just people in general in the world at the moment, and the pandemic has really shown that it's very, very important for all of us to stick together, even if we're on a virtual platform. It has been difficult, I think, especially for the youth, to be having to work from home, work online, learn online, and it's been very, very challenging also for the mental health. And I just want to say to you, if you feel you need support, do not hesitate to seek help. Mental health is not something that should be stigmatized and something that should not be ignored. Supply chain management has been thrown into the spotlight across the world. Agility and transparency of supply chains has become critical, and that is something that we need to keep in mind, especially as we're learning about supply chain. SAPICS is here to contribute towards this. It's an extraordinary organization. It's been around for 55 years, which I'm sure is more than double than the age of some of you here today. And they are genuinely passionate about supply chain management. They have seen firsthand how we can contribute towards supply chain professionals to really save lives and change the world. They educate supply chain professionals in Africa. They have a huge network of education partners, have training programs, and internationally recognized certification. So please make sure that you have a look at that. That is something that's very important in your career, that you continue to learn, and SAPICS is there to do it for you. Africa has an abundance of opportunity, but as other countries as well, here as well, have also had compromised economies. And again, SAPICS is here to help you tackle those challenges. So make sure that you draw from the advantages that you would have from a membership. And for those who are not yet a member, please think about joining us. I've been invited to lead this amazing organization. I'm really grateful to the directors of SAPICS and all others that volunteer their time. It's a purely voluntary task, and it's really a real pleasure to do that. I'd like to thank all the sponsors of this event: Accenture, Imperial, OpenText, Easy Access, and SAS. Thanks so much for your support, and especially for the youth who are the future of our countries. And to our new sponsors, thanks for joining this journey and making sure that this type of event can continue. And our longtime partners, your valued collaboration is really appreciated. A big thank you to the speakers for your time given to share your expertise. I'm sure that the youth and the young professionals will learn a great deal from you. For all the partners, both at home and internationally, to make such an effort to contribute to this event, thank you so much for that. Helping us uplift and educate young professionals all around the world is so important. I'd like to have a special call out to Kolofelo Mabila, who is the chair of the YP and Student Committee. Your dedication and commitment is remarkable, and we thank you most sincerely for that. I'm extremely excited that there's the launch of the SAPICS mentorship program with this event. Mentoring is a key part of growing a career, allowing yourself to be challenged so that you can learn, grow, and find your way to where you want to be. I remember in my own career, I was an international global career for over 30 years. And I was saying, why am I not being promoted? Why am I not moving forward? And I had a fantastic boss at the time, and he said to me, you know what? you need to go on a women's leadership course. You need to get a mentor, and you need to find out what it is that it's missing. He didn't tell me about it. He said, you need to find out for yourself. And that's why mentoring is so, so important. You need to find these things out yourself. But a mentor is someone who can guide you along the way, ask you those challenging questions, make you think. And eventually you actually realize it yourself, where you need to be. And that's how you find your way in moving along in your career. And don't be worried about, I'm not moving forward fast enough, or I don't think I'm in the right job. Jobs are not always easy. There's always a time when things are tough and you need to just bite the bullet, because your boss will always change. And when things are hard, that's when you learn, because then you're forced to be creative. You're forced to look towards other ways of doing things. And that's where your career remains exciting, because you don't want to keep doing the same of the same. Otherwise, you get the same results. So I think you recognize that from Einstein. For all those who have volunteered for the mentorship program, thank you so, so much. I know mentoring is something that is, as I mentioned, is very, very important. And it's really going to give a meaningful contribution to the profession of these young people. I hope all of you are seeking that mentorship. This is a fantastic opportunity, because getting a mentor is actually quite difficult, and getting the right match is actually very, very important. So you all have received the information about the mentors. You should have by now have thought about who you'd like to be your mentor. And tomorrow you have the time to grab a table with those mentors and start having the right conversations and finding who's the right fit for you. And to the team behind the scenes, the SAPICS staff and the conference team of Uphaven Management. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. It's a new way of doing conferences. Floor is a great software. It's a great way of doing a conference, but you still need a team of people behind that. And for all the people at this conference, remember that. When there's a software, it doesn't mean you are no longer needed. Software is just an enabler. Without the people and the processes, software will not work. It will do things, but it will not find the way that the company needs to be run, and it will not bring value. So thank you so much to the Uphaven Management and the SAPICS conference team. The program is fantastic. I've gone through the program. I read about all the speakers, and I think there's a lot to learn in the next day and a half, and I'm really, really impressed by all of it. And thank you also to all of you for embracing online conferencing. You hear a lot of people saying, I'm completely zoomed out. I can't do it anymore. And this is the future. This is the way life is going to be. So it's best we just embrace it. And thank you so much for still being online with us today. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the lounge, sharing a virtual cup of coffee over the next 1.5 days. And remember, you must keep on learning, keep on sharing, and keep those supply chain going. It's also my honor today to introduce Zinola Moodley. Zinola is the demand planning capability lead at Mondelez and is our keynote speaker. She's based in Singapore, so I'm very happy that it's still later afternoon for her. She has 16 years of experience across demand planning, supply planning, information technology and systems, project management, and program management. She's had experience in mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, transformations, zero-based budgeting, and most of the time she says she has thrived. So there's a fantastic mix of experience that you're seeing here today from her, because a merger is one thing, an acquisition is another thing, but a divestiture is also quite a challenging thing to do. She's had multiple functions and roles, and she's been able to nurture the strength for her career by being able to collaborate and influence. So the art of partnering to deliver projects, manage supply chains, implement systems, and help make business better is one of the things that she finds very important. She's an industrial engineer by trade, and her main areas of interest are planning, IBP, S&OP, career coaching, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and sustainability. So let me hand over to Zinola with her speech called Thank You, Next, Making Holistic Career and Life Choices. Over to you, Zinola.
Great. Thank you so much, MJ. Thank you for that introduction. I'm so glad to be here. Good afternoon from Singapore, and good morning to everyone in South Africa. I'm just going to share my screen. And I have a few slides. Oh, if I can get it up there. Oh, don't know if that's working yet. Great. So, as MJ said, I'm going to be speaking about making holistic career and life decisions. And just so that you know, I can't see the screen. I can only see my slides. So if you want to share a reaction or put your questions in the chat while I'm talking, that'll be great. I'll be happy to pick up the questions at the end. But just helps me to see kind of the interaction and make sure that the people on the other side of the screen are engaged and interested. So good afternoon. As I said, my name is Zinola. MJ's already gone through some of my career highlights. I'm currently the Global Demand Planning Capability Lead at Mondelez. I started my supply chain career at Volition, a supply chain consulting company where I had a almost 4-year stint. I moved on to Cadbury, which later became Kraft Foods, doing demand and supply planning for 3 years. And then I got the opportunity to move to Singapore, where my family and I have been for the last 10 years. The Mondelez spin-off happened in the middle of that. And over the 10 years that I've been here in Singapore, I've had roles, as MJ mentioned, across IT, CS&L, project management, program management, and global demand planning. So that's a little bit about me. But today, I want to spend some time figuring out what we can learn from Ariana Grande. So one thing I love about Ariana is that she is unapologetic about the choices and decisions that she's made in her life, even seemingly bad ones. I mean, she wrote a whole song about it. So in line with that, I want to share some of my thoughts on how I have made holistic career and life decisions. I just want to walk through 3 short stories, what these have taught me, and hopefully you can glean something from that, and I can teach you something too. So assuming I live to 100, medical innovations and whatnot considered, and I retire at 70, I'm currently about 1/3 of the way through my career. And these past 18 months, longer than that now actually, I, along with the rest of the working world, have had a good long think about what exactly it is that I want out of my career. I'm sure you've heard about the great attrition or the great resignation. There's many people all over the world thinking about their next step, their next job, their next role. McKinsey reports that 40% of employees have stated that they are at least somewhat likely to leave their current job in the next 3 to 6 months. That's a lot. I mean, that's huge compared to the normal turnover rate in companies. So the top 3 factors that employees cited as reasons for quitting were they didn't feel valued by their organization. 54% of people said that. They didn't feel valued by their managers. 52% of people noted that as a reason, or because they didn't feel a sense of belonging at work. 51% of people noted that. So what does this mean for you and me today? What does that have to do with you? If you're a grad, still looking to move into the marketplace, or if you've just started working, you're a new professional. Firstly, there are going to be a myriad of opportunities available to you. So in the article that McKinsey shared, they said it can either be the great attrition or it can be considered the great attraction. There will be many employers out there looking for talent, and that's you guys. You are talent. So this is where Ariana comes in. How do you, like Ariana, make decisions about your career and your life that you can look back on and say, yeah, that turned out amazing. That was a good choice. So at the start of your career, or at any point in your career, really, it can be easy to jump from job to job, from company to company, looking for the next best role, following the money, following the titles, and it might move you along the corporate ladder. But if you want to build a meaningful career, a satisfying career, there needs to be a more considered, measured approach. As you can see from the McKinsey research, people are looking for more than just a job, right? More than just a paycheck. So today I want to tell you 3 stories, as I mentioned, and 3 things that these stories have taught me. So the first story I want to share is about 22-year-old me. I was graduating from the University of Pretoria as an industrial engineer. I had a bursary from a large financial organization at the time that had carried me through my 4 years at university. And one of the conditions of the bursary, as is common, is that I need to work back the bond for 4 years to the company. So I'd worked at the company during my holidays over the 4 years that I was studying. So I had a good idea of the kind of work that I would do. I had a good read, I thought, on the company culture and the people that I would be working with. At the same time, through a series of fortunate events, I ended up with an offer from a small consulting company. They had a great recruitment campaign, very excellent people on the team, and I had the chance to interact with the leaders of that company, to meet the team that I'd potentially be part of and working with. And I was torn. I had a decision to make at the beginning of my professional career. Do I remain loyal to this large financial organization? Stable company, higher salary, more potential for growth, opportunities to climb the corporate ladder, great things, really great opportunities there. After all, they had given me my bursary. They gave me the wonderful opportunity to study industrial engineering in the first place. On the other hand, do I take a bit of a risk and step out on a limb for this exciting kind of fast-paced job in consulting? Less money, unfortunately. And I was pretty sure it was going to be harder work. But what it did have was an amazing team, a wonderful space where ideas could thrive and was highly collaborative. And even grad level me could contribute at a company like that. So as I mentioned earlier, I went with a consulting role at the consulting company. And I met my husband at that company, so I'm pretty sure I made the right decision. But this experience in my early career taught me about values. It showed me the things that I valued, what my values were and still are. So Brené Brown is one of my favorite authors, and she defines value as a way of being or believing that we hold most important. You can read through the definition in more detail, but that's the crux of what she's trying to say there. This is from her book, Dare to Lead. And you can see a list of the values. I know it's very tiny, but hopefully you can see some of the words pop out there on the right. And I knew, even early on in my fledgling career, that I didn't want to become someone whose definition of success was based on money or position. I didn't value those things. That was not what my value base was. What I wanted was to be growing and learning every day. That was what I valued. I was eager to be surrounded by some of the brightest minds I've ever worked with, even still to this day. It was inspiring, it was interesting, and every day felt like a bit of an adventure. Of course, it was a steep learning curve, and it was stressful, and it was difficult at times. But the things I learned in that almost 4-year period, the skills I developed in that job at that company are things that I still carry with me to this day. So at that point, 22-year-old me didn't really have a firm grasp on what her values were. So I was making my decisions based more on instinct and gut feel. But I want to encourage you, even now, maybe especially now, early on in your career, to figure out what your values are. You don't need a book. You don't need to read Brené Brown to figure out what your values are. You probably already inherently have values, but it is worth spending the time to figure out what your values are. So now, when I make choices in my career and in my life, the questions I ask myself are, firstly, what are my values? Can I clearly articulate what my values are? What are the things that are important to me? And then I ask, does this role, this company, this decision that I need to make, does it align with my values? Do I want to be working at a consulting company, or do I want to have financial stability and work at a larger, more stable firm? Either option is correct. It depends on what your values are. Do the people at this company carry similar values to me? Are these people my people? And note that I'm not saying my kind of people. You're not looking for a company or a role with people who look like you, dress like you, talk like you. That would be infinitely uninspiring. But you are looking for people who carry similar values to you. And looking back at the McKinsey research, we see how important feeling valued is and having that sense of belonging and connectedness is. So that's about values. I want to move on to the second story. And this is what I call the middle years black hole. So in the middle of my CV currently, there's a bit of a black hole of uninspiring and uninteresting roles. But to be very honest, when I was in those roles, I was thinking, what was I thinking? Not very exciting, not necessarily roles that I would go back now and think, yeah, I definitely want to do that. But my grandiose points of view at 22 required some reassessment when a few years into our time in Singapore, we decided to start a family. And our priority at that point in our lives was to be active and present parents to our children. So I went to my manager at the time, and I'm very privileged to be able to ask for the possibility of a role that was firstly, less operational, wouldn't require any travel, and where I could work from home. So note, this is probably 2011, 2012. So very much pre-COVID days when working from home was not the norm. So at that time, being in Singapore, I had been in regional and global roles. And as you may know, many regional and global roles are very heavy on travel. So the role I was in had about 50 to 60% travel. I was away from home maybe 2 weeks out of the month. So although I had my list of criteria was short and sweet, it was actually a tall order for my situation at that time. But for me, being able to clearly articulate my priorities was huge. So allowing myself to ask for things that I needed in my life was huge. So if you just go back to the value, so the value side of things, those are those kind of overarching ideas that drive your life. When trying to identify your values, as we mentioned earlier, you ask what's important to me. And then when you look at your priorities, you're asking, okay, so what is important to me right now? And these values and priorities don't have to be conflicting. They might be different. They might change over time, but they don't have to be conflicting. So 22-year-old me wanted, personal growth in my career, in my skill set. 30-year-old me was looking for growth in my family life and in my home life. So this thing of growth is still one of my key values to this day, but how I prioritize that looked different. So back to my story, my wonderful manager that I had at the time was able to secure a role for me that fit my kind of tall order short list of criteria. And looking back, I don't regret taking those roles. So some might consider that these roles were a detour or that, I sacrificed my career for my family. Both of these sentiments are true in part, but because I was clear on what my priorities were, I was happy to make those choices. I was clear on why I was making those choices. So when you're looking at your priorities, you have to decide what your highest priorities are and have the courage, pleasantly, smilingly, and I love this, non-apologetically, to say no to other things. And the way to do that is by having a bigger yes burning inside. So my bigger yes at that time was my family, and that was my priority at the time. Obviously, there's a quote from Stephen Covey here. So when you're making decisions in your life, when you're trying to identify your priorities, the questions you're asking, the questions I asked myself is, what is important to me right now? What do I need in my life right now? And can I clearly articulate that? And that's it. How can I articulate my priorities clearly? And then I want to get on to my final story. And this story is about my life right now. So as I mentioned right in the beginning, I've been working in kind of the demand planning, project management space on and off for the last 10 years of my career. And yeah, about 4 years ago, I started to get a bit restless and I decided I needed a change. But what kind of a change? How do you go about making a change when you feel it's time for that to happen in your career. So I remember meeting with a group of friends. We were just talking about, where we see ourselves in the future, dreaming about the things that we love, the things that we desire, the things we're looking forward to. This is so often when you're just having these kind of casual connections and conversations, or the dreams and the desires that you have for your life can start to make themselves known. So I considered my career at that point, and I decided I wanted to change the trajectory of my career. And what helped me to start to make this change was purpose. So I thought about the things I was passionate about. I thought back to when I was I think it was 9 years old. It's always the advice they give you when you're trying to figure out what your purpose and your passion is, right? Think of yourself as a child and the things that really stirred you. And I remember myself as a very stubborn and determined 9-year-old going around our school collecting styrofoam containers from the garbage to get recycled. So I was wearing plastic gloves, single-use plastic gloves, touche. But I did manage to, organize our grade, get everybody involved, make sure that we, recycled 100% of the styrofoam containers. I was very enthusiastic about that. And I remember this passion that I had for the environment and sustainability. And I mean, now we know how important sustainability is. So I decided to pursue, I'm currently pursuing my master's in sustainability at Harvard, with the purpose to make a difference in the supply chain world through sustainability. So this was in 2018 when I made this decision. As I said, I'm in the middle of my degree program at the moment. So although I'm currently, studying and working and raising a family, I know what my purpose is. I know the journey that I want to go on. So I'm clear on, I'm starting off studying, learning, growing. Once again, one of those important values for me by studying my master's. And then I'd like to move into a role that contributes to the world through sustainable supply chains. But this middle ground, this period I'm in right now, it's not exactly easy, but I know why I'm doing it. And this gives me resilience. This helps me to push through. So there are many people a lot smarter than me who have done extensive work around understanding your purpose. And one of my favorites is Simon Sinek. So you might be familiar with his 2009 TED Talk around how great leaders inspire action. And he talks about the golden circle. This is from his work and his book, Find Your Why and Start With Why, which is focused on bringing your purpose to life by understanding your why. Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? So knowing your why helps you to know how to live your life and what to do. What are the decisions that you need to make? So like your values and your priorities, it's a beacon. It's a beacon that can guide you as you're making decisions. And I'm going to assume that for all of us here today, we feel somewhat strongly about being supply chain professionals, about being in this space, about contributing to the world in this way. You're either studying in that direction or you've just started working. And my hope is that you do feel passionately about it, that you feel excited about the work that you're doing, that you can link your purpose and your passion to your job in the supply chain space. So once you know your purpose, you know what you're passionate about, you know why you get out of bed in the morning, you can then make choices based on your priorities in line with your values. And I want to share, I think I have time for just kind of a detour story, and I'm glad that MJ had mentioned this earlier in her intro as well. As a bonus, I'll just share something that I've learned a little bit late in the game, is that you can't do this alone. One thing that can help you on your journey through your career is to get people around you that can support you. So Jo Saxton shares 5 relationships that that every leader needs, and I would argue that every person needs. So she talks about the significant others, the support crew, the pain processes, the professional peers, and then coach or mentor. So I want to focus on that coach or mentor piece. I have both a coach and a mentor, two separate people. And that's been a huge help to me and a huge support for me in my career journey. And I'd love to encourage you, as MJ also encouraged you, to please join the SAPICS mentoring program that's on offer. It's not often you get like a stage such as this to, pick and choose between many professionals with career history, with experience, that are willing to kind of be with you and support you. The great thing about mentors is that they walk with you through your challenges, they give you a different perspective, but they help you to work through it so that you know the decisions and the choices that you want to make. So that's just a little side note. So please do look out for that. So I've come to the end of what I wanted to share today. And I trust that something that I said would have spoken to you, would have stood out to you. And hopefully you can just pick up one or two things from the session today. And as you make your career choices, career decisions, as you make decisions about your life, I hope that you would consider, what is your purpose? What are your priorities? And then what are the values that are driving those decisions? Beyond just getting promotions, beyond earning more money, getting the right title, what is it that you want to do with your life? So thank you so much for joining me, for joining us this morning. I'd like to, suppose I open up for questions now.
Yes, I'm looking in there's a Q&A panel. Everyone, please, if you have some questions, then I will read them out. Here you go. How do you get rid of people who don't share your values?
Oh, oh dear.
Nice
I don't know if you can. Easy one off the bat, no problem. Well, I don't know if you can get rid of them. We don't usually have much control over other people and the decisions that they make and the values that they hold. But you can remove yourself from that situation. I know that's not always easy. It's easy to say step away or get a different job or move to a different country. But yeah, you only have control over the decisions and the choices that you make. So sometimes you have to deal with that for a period of time. But hopefully you can remove yourself to a place where you are surrounded by people that have the same values as you do.
So Louis, I hope that answered your question. I'm just looking to see if there are any others. At the moment, it's a little bit quiet. That's often in the first session, everyone's a bit shy. But I think, Zinola, you've given us some very, very good insights. Talking about values, I'm just going to talk a little bit and see if anyone else wants to ask a question. Values, I think, is right on point. If I think about my own personal career, it's very difficult to stay in a place where you don't have some people with the same values. And I see someone else, Morris, he's asking, how do I deal with company politics? That's
also a very loaded question, Morris, but what I can only speak from my experience, and MJ, I'm sure you have experience in this as well, but how I've always dealt with this is to be direct with the people that you need to be direct with. So there's people you can speak to and you can approach and you can say, I didn't like the way you did this, or let's talk about how we work better together. I always find that transparency and facing these things head on works much better than kind of waiting for things to simmer down or just waiting it out. It's bringing those things, into the light and into a place where you can have a conversation with that person. And if that's not possible, as I mentioned with people that don't share your values and aren't willing to have feedback or take on feedback, I mean, like I said, you're not going to change others. So you can only change yourself and focus on how you respond to that situation. So I'd say try to, if possible, approach those people, have the conversations with them, deal with it head on. If that doesn't work, like I said, you focus on your response and making sure that you are not getting embroiled and you're not becoming part of the problem, but that you're part of the solution.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah, I agree. I think it's also keeping close to understanding what the politics are all about. It's often an agenda that we just need to understand, and then we can maneuver around it. Sometimes you just have to learn to maneuver. I see here someone's asking, how do you deal with feeling invisible despite all the effort that you put in? Thanks, Nikita, for that question.
Yeah, that's also a great question. And I think, MJ, you mentioned it a little bit earlier in your intro about, sometimes, it's difficult and you have to push through a little bit. I've had periods of my career like this as well. I remember that kind of my middle years black hole. I did feel like in those roles that I was in, I was fairly invisible. People can often take, especially project and program managers, for granted, kind of as you're just doing something in the background and, not seeing the value that you're adding. And the way that I'll give you my experience, the way that I was able to break through that is I asked for a highly visible project. So I asked for a highly visible assignment. I said to my manager, I think I'm getting lost in the woodwork here, and people are not seeing my work. So I asked for the opportunity, and that's something I mentioned earlier, right? Being here and being able to articulate what your priorities are. So I asked for a short-term assignment. And obviously I was privileged enough to be able to get one. So I had a short-term assignment that was very high profile and very visible, and was able to kind of raise my profile that way. So that's one way that I approached it. But yeah, it can be difficult when you're putting in the effort, you're putting in the work, and nobody kind of sees it. Sometimes you have to advocate for yourself, which can be very difficult. But I want to just encourage you. You know the work that you put in. You know the value you add. So push through and be bold to ask for those opportunities.
Thanks, Zinola. That was a great answer. I have nothing to add there. I got another question here from Sabelo, who's saying, how do I navigate growth in a company that has different values, culture, dynamics than my personal values?
That's very, very difficult. I must be honest. Both my husband and I, we work for multinationals here in Singapore, and we both very much love our company cultures. So we're able to thrive because our personal values and the values that's in the company kind of coincide. There's an overlap there. But if you have very different values, I think that can be difficult. So you have to decide what your boundaries are. For example, for me, there's certain companies that I wouldn't want to work for because, the products they produce, or I don't agree with that, or I don't believe in that. So I would stay away from roles in those companies. But if you are in that situation, and no, it's, we can't always just leave a job and find something else and move on. I would say be very clear about your personal boundaries, even if that's different to what's in the culture, what's in the organization. So if you're saying, for example, I believe in equality, but in your company, people treat men and women differently, or then you stand up for what you believe in, so that you can feel you're not, going against your own personal beliefs and your own personal value system. Yeah, I'm sorry, that is a tough one, Sabelo. So good luck there.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think we've all been in that situation where we say, okay, I've joined this company, I want to learn, and I'm clashing with the values. And I agree with you. You have to look at it and say, the boundaries are very, very important. If you feel, okay, I'm unhappy, and so going back to why do I wake up in the morning? And if you wake up in the morning and you're dragging your feet, then you really need to rethink: am I in the right place? But difficult situations are also situations to learn. You won't always have nice people around you, and it's again, how do you navigate around them? How do you make them feel important so they become more pleasant? That's also a tactic that you can use, is where you can actually make them feel like you do understand their side of the story, even though you may not agree with it, just to make your life a little bit easier. And then you have to make a call and decide, is this what you want or not? So I have another question for you. So the questions are rolling in. Mubulelo, you seem to have a strong emotional intelligence. How did you get your EQ right? It's very challenging to develop one. Great question.
Well, thank you firstly for that comment, Mubulelo. I think I've done a lot of personal work, and I've mentioned a few books that I've read. I'm a big proponent of learning and growing every day. So I read very broadly. I read a lot of things in the kind of emotional intelligence space or personal development space. I mentioned, 3 of my authors in my presentation there. And I think if you are aware that you always need to be growing and learning, and then you're not like, I've got it, I've arrived, and I know everything now, which we never do, right? The world is changing so quickly. You never know everything. There's always something you don't know. So if you can keep that kind of heart of learning and growing and developing yourself, I believe that it will come over time. And yeah, it is something you have to sow into. So you have to work for. It's not just something that, one day you wake up and you're good at communicating, or you're good at talking to people or doing presentations. It's really something that you learn. And I want to say, with my first job at Volition, when I was at the consulting company, this was we did a lot of work on this, kind of connecting as teams and collaborating and team building and trying to understand your team. So that was, it started very early in my career, this understanding and this focus of the importance of emotional intelligence. So yeah, the short answer, you have to put in the work, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned earlier, Zinola, you mentioned about TEDx. So for those who don't want to read books and do, because that's something where I think that has changed as well. I also like looking at all the books. But if you look at TEDx, Google sort of the people like Beanie Brown, I think you can get a lot out of that to try and get that balance between the IQ and the EQ. So I think often what happens in organizations is that your executive level have a lot of IQ, and somewhere the EQ can be lacking, and that's very, very difficult to manage. So I've got a couple more questions going. The question might speak to a certain aspect of invisibility. So this is coming from Chantal. How did you navigate through your first job and workplace vulnerability after the season in which you worked back your bond or bursary?
Well, I must be honest. My first job, as I said, at the consulting company, I didn't feel particularly vulnerable, but in the workplace, because when I arrived at the company, I was partnered with other people already in the company. They really provided a good support structure for that first job, kind of moving into the workplace. If your company doesn't provide it for you, which hopefully any good company will, they will buddy you, or they will partner you with somebody in your team, or even somebody in the broader organization if they want cross-functional connection to walk with you and partner with you. And somebody you can, let's be honest, I did go cry on that person's shoulder a couple of times in the first few years of working. But if your company doesn't provide that, Chantal, then I would say go and seek that out. It might be somebody in your company, it might be somebody outside of the company. But seek out somebody who you can partner with and buddy with and walk with, especially in that first season as you're getting into your first job.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I'm only going to do 2 more questions because then we have the next speaker. If you work for a company that has a very flat organizational structure, this is coming from Nompumelelo, where you can see that there's no growth, even if you stay for 2 more years. So I assume that person has been in the organization and thinking of staying for 2 more years. What would you suggest would be the best way to move forward?
Well, this is a tough one, Nompumelelo. I feel like I need more information to make to give good advice here. So as I mentioned, you kind of have to figure out what your own priorities are, and where you see yourself. What are you becoming? What are you growing towards? Will there still be opportunities for growth and learning in different ways, in taking on larger projects, or asking for more accountability? Or is it just a case of you're stifled and you're not able to grow at all? Or so you've got to think about what are your priorities, and then would it make sense to stay? Also, you do have to be reasonable about that. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to stay if you know that you've reached your cap in a certain team or in a certain company, and that's a fair discussion to have with your manager, and hopefully they're supportive. They should be able to see that as well, and support you through that process to say, okay, this is how you can grow internally. And if we don't have it internally, they should also be happy to support you in moving and finding a place where you can grow and add value.
Yeah,
I'd love to talk more, Nompumelelo. So if you are available, please let's connect in the lounge, because I feel like there's much more to unpack there.
Yeah, definitely, because it's part of that career planning as well, right? Is there even a plan in place would be my question as well.
Yes.
Last question, because we only have 2 minutes. Have you experienced gender discrimination? And if so, how do you navigate around it? This is from Nikela.
Yes, it's unfortunate, but I have been working for 16 years now, and these are things that we face, if not on a daily basis, kind of microaggressions in the workplace, or people being flat out, discriminatory kind of your face. So there's really 2 ways that I deal with this. So the one way is to, as I mentioned earlier, I think it was Tamara, approach that person to call out behavior that is unacceptable. So if you're constantly talking over me and negating my opinion in meetings and not letting me speak and interrupting, I'll call out that person and have a one-on-one, a separate discussion about how this behavior is not helpful for the team and for me personally. So I've had to do that once or twice. It's a very difficult conversation, and many don't acknowledge that there's a problem or an issue. But as I mentioned earlier, facing it and addressing it is one of the things that I would do. I value that. I don't think keeping silent is the right option. If that doesn't work, then escalating to a manager or a peer who can partner with you to speak to that person, but a peer who will give you your voice, not speak over you and fight on your behalf. I think it's important that we do stand up and fight against discrimination. So those are the kind of the two ways that I would approach it. Many companies have a speaking out policy as well, which I hope you never have to use. But I would encourage you to speak out and be bold and stand against discrimination, because if you don't stand against it, it just continues. So I know it's very difficult to do that, but that would be my approach. Tough. So all the best if you are facing that. We can also talk. I'd love to talk more about that, because that's, very difficult situation.
Thanks, Zinola. I'm going to have to cut you off because the next session is starting and everyone's going to be thrown out and out of this room. So thanks so much. It was great information. I could relate to a lot of it in my 30-year career. A lot of things came up that I also experienced. Remember, guys, purpose, the golden circle, why, how, what, and passion. And don't be silent. If things are not working, talk about it and ask and approach the right people. Thanks so much, Zinola. It was very nice to meet you. And everyone else, you're going to be moved to the next session, which is starting right now. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.